In general, with entertainment, it's really big thing, yeah? So even if we look at, compare it with like cinema industry, if we look at with sport life industry, it's really big thing. It's really like a lot of money, actually, really good to be part of that industry. So from that perspective, we could see, okay, it's so amazing to be here. It's actually so great to be there, yeah? But if you look at the same industry from the perspective, actually, at the same time, there is estimated that there is like, hundred thousands of the games fighting for the attention of the users. And even like if you look at the last June in Google Play alone, around like 9,000 new games was added. If you look at from that perspective, you could think actually it's not only just this nice picture, there is some a little bit other dimension of it as well. Yeah, there is it's just amazing future, like amazing opportunity, but it's not so easy to catch the opportunity. So that's why I would like to talk about it, like how to really increase the success of that probability of the success. Yeah, because there is really a lot of opportunity, there is a lot of money, but it's not just going from the heaven and just waiting to have it. Yeah, so how to actually increase the probability of the success, and how to actually look at from the perspective of, for example, financing, when in general the last quarters are much more quiet for, in general, for example, from the investment perspective, especially if we talk about bigger deals. Smaller deals still have the pretty nice flow, but it's actually much harder to get this financing and investment than it used to be like 3 or 4 or like 6 quarters ago. So, and in this case, I think from the founder perspective, it's quite important to understand a few things. The first one is really important to understand is high win, high risk business. It's like, it's not for the people who like to have easy job. It's not for the people who like to have easy life. Like sometimes people say, okay, I'm creating the games because I like games. I'm enjoying the games. And it's a really nice approach, of course. But for me, there is really big difference. I'm, for example, let's see, going to the gym because I like gym versus I'm going to the gym and I want to win the next Olympics in the 3 years. And I think in terms of the mobile gaming industry, the second approach is much more related than the first one. Because again, it's high risk, high win. There is a lot of money, but it's not so easy to get it. Because if we look at, for example, from the data perspective, like 92 billions in the last year, but top 10 games are taking around 15% of that revenue. Like the next 40 games are taking additionally around 21%. So if we look at that at least from the revenue perspective, looking just at the purchases and subscriptions, so either you are in the top, and there is much less money left further. Yes, so if you are like in the game number 3,000 in the casual industry, I'm not I'm not counting for really big success. And of course, if we look at some success rate, again, high win, high risk. If you win a lot, but you need to have a lot of preparation to have that winning. So especially that if we look at just downloads perspective, it's a bit easier. So usually this minimum money is a little bit easier to earn in other revenue-based part of the business, because again, this concentration by the games is a bit lower on the downloads than on the revenue. So a small amount of money is a bit easier to earn in ad monetization. But still, even in terms of downloads, like the top 50 games, like in this case, top 100 games are taking like almost half of the downloads. Again, not easy business to be in. And of course, that's one side. But on the other side, if you look at that from the business perspective, there are not so many businesses where you can actually achieve so big success in terms of the size of the business. So like, for example, if we look at the Dream Games from Turkey, yeah, when they were developing and actually publishing the game, they were like a team of 10 people. and it's like one of the most successful games that are actually earning millions of dollars yearly. Hobby, that is like, the famous publisher of Archero, like famous publisher of Survivor. I remember when I visited their office, it was just a few days after actually a few months after they published the Archero. At that time, there were just around 15 people. Now they are like around 50, and still they're extremely successful in terms of revenue. Yeah? So again, it's not easy business, but on the other side, there are not so many business models, there are not so many industries where with solid, relatively low size of the company, we can achieve extremely hard success, extremely strong success. Then we need to understand, as the founders, that it's extremely professional business already. What I mean by that is that it's not, okay, I will create the game and then let's see what will happen. Again, if you look by the data, if you look, for example, at the top games, again, the data is provided in that way that we have top 10 games, top 11 to 50, top 51 to 100, top 101 to 500. And we see that if I look at the data very recently, you see that those that were top 10 in US, because I took US because it's the biggest market, it's actually the easiest to look at the data, top 10 games by revenue, by average, were 7 to 8 years old. Top up to like 500, by average, they were like 4 to 5 years old. Again, a little bit easier situation in terms of downloads. So again, even if we look at the growth of hyper-casual and so, even with the hyper-casual, you see the top 10 games by downloads, even in US, by average, were like 3 to 4 years old. So it's over the time when you create the game and then it became the hit in the next day. Sometimes it happens, but it's not the rule. And you shouldn't really progress, and actually you shouldn't plan your business for such scenario because it doesn't happen so often. And you need to understand it. Again, high win, but high risk business as well. It's not just because I like the gym, but because I want to win Olympics. And in that we can go even further. Those games that are there is not just they are really they have specific history, but they have extremely high quality. Even if you are professional, there are a lot of people who know what they're doing in other parts of the world as well. So for example, I look at the data by, okay, let's look at the top games by revenue and top games by the downloads, and what is the average rating. And what is interesting to see, almost across the board, the average rating was around 4.5, 4.4. Again, extremely high quality content. So I'm not just saying you to discourage from mobile development. I'm just saying that you need to be prepared for making sure that you are doing, that you know what you are doing, and you are actually really taking care of the quality. Because again, high win, high risk, which means you need to look you need to really try to be one of the best ones. And then, if we go further, we actually go to the point that we need to understand the scope of development is changing as well. What I mean by that, there is a lot of actually a lot of very interesting reports that were published just recently. For example, a really good one that was published by Unity that is showing that, for example, on one side, especially in mobile gaming, we see that studios are building more and more builds. They are doing preparation more and more prototypes. And actually the data is backing up that. We see that it's really doing those, having as many ideas as possible, trying to actually reuse some content that you have already. So it's not just trying to have that every project from the scratch, but trying to use that content that you created that has high quality. But even if we see that there is more and more tools that actually help to speed up the development, they make actually sure that you have very high quality content, and you have much faster actually way to prototype than it used to be in the past. At the same time, if we look at the data, we see there is actually less and less games added to the stores as well. Why? Because the quality bar is just raising. You are trying to have more and more ideas, and you should do this, and studios are building more and more prototypes, they are doing more and more different builds, but at the end of the day, they need to think better and more actually before they add this game to the store. Why? Because the quality threshold is very high. So in this case, it means that you need to test and try a lot of ideas, but making that in very processed and very structured way. In the way, making sure that once you are adding that game to the store, it's really good quality. And we see it actually even across the board that even really good studios that have extremely high quality, like in this case, that was a very famous case coming from Supercell, when at a specific point, they announced that actually they are even sunsetting that game, working on that game. Actually, the game came back later with another company, but even that game, you see, very high rating, 4.7, extremely high quality, really good studio that knows what it's doing, and still, at a specific point, that saw and look at the metric and saw, okay, that game is actually below our expectations. It doesn't seem that with that game we will have really profitable business. So actually, we need to move to another project. So, and we see that there is actually more and more those cases when, again, it needs a lot of preparation, a lot of focus to make sure that the final outcome will have extremely good quality. So, very interesting like example from Supercell that was saying, okay, to make just a few extremely good products, we need to sunset quite a few as well. And if we look at that, we need to understand that with that point, actually, it comes even further, understanding that it's even more and more important in this competitive business to understand what is actually context of the business and how actually I know that I know what I'm doing. And what I mean by that is that it used to be the case that once we were preparing the game, we just had the idea of the game, and then we had the full launch of that game, and we ship it right away, yeah? But because now this quality bar is so high, and actually we need to make sure that actually we are going in the right direction. In mobile gaming especially, there is more and more actually those cases when we do some stuff for some time, and then we check with the metrics, okay, are we going in the right direction? So for example, we are doing some prototype with, let's see, maybe a few days, sometimes even maybe a few hours of gameplay. We add to the store and we're checking, okay, is the next day retention good? So if we push that the game, people try it, how many of them are coming back? We are not checking like how long they are staying, but are just checking if they are going back, if they have the interest in that content. Then we are adding more content. We are doing again the push of the game, and we are checking, okay, are those people are coming back on the next day, on the day 5, day 7? And then even adding more content and trying to understand, okay, is that game really good enough at the specific stage so we can move to the next one? So making sure that actually we are preparing extremely good quality content. And we can even see it, even if we look at the data by those games, like, you know, I was sharing this Everdale example, yeah? We see that is like more kind of the pushes from the marketing side that we saw for that game. We see, okay, there was an initial stage, quite a lot of traffic got. Okay, someone look at the metrics, okay, we need to work on that game even more. Then there was push again. Again, something probably was to be fixed, and then someone said, okay, let's give that game another chance. Let's try, okay, if we, after a few weeks of another work after a few weeks of making the game even better. Let's check, let's give the final chance and check if it works or not. And then someone decided, okay, it doesn't seem that it's going in the promising way. And we can see even that in many cases it's done with the traffic from countries that are not very expensive, like with traffic from Philippines, with traffic from Romania, with traffic from Poland, from those countries that either are extremely cheap, and for example, a lot of population speaking English, so we can check at least some basic stuff, or sometimes with those countries that are cheaper than Western markets, but we can at least check what is the behavior of the users. And in this case, we can see that, for example, on a few other games, like this is like Clash Mini from Supercell. We have, again, in this case, we had Australia as the source of as the part of the traffic. We have another case from Zynga, where, again, a few pushes trying to check what is the state of the game, what is happening there, then working again of the project, improving that, pushing again to the moment we actually believe that that product is really good quality. Yeah? And why it's so important? Because if we are building the game on mobile and we are preparing the game on mobile, unfortunately we need to expect two things. The first one is that if we start to get some users, it is very often that the first set of users will have the best metrics. It's like this golden cohort that loves our game because that game is just for them. But once we start to expand that traffic, once we start to add more and more users, there will be more and more users who actually are just a bit less aligned with our game. So in general, with growing scale, we have a little bit declining quality of the user. And then on the other side, from the marketing perspective, if we, for example, want to buy users, like the first 100 users will be very cheap, because every platform will sell it very, very cheaply and very easily. But once we start to grow the scale, the price of these users will go. So again, we need to actually build and extend mobile projects, knowing that specific rule. So if we, for example, create the game and we just have we had just 2,000 users, it doesn't mean that if we just buy 100,000 users, it will be exactly the same metric. And then on the other side, if we just bought 100 users with small, Google, Facebook campaign, if we just want to buy way more, that will be more expensive. So that's why understanding those metrics is so important, because again, mobile game, we are building for the scale. And again, it's not easy topic. It's not very easy topic. Even Playtika in their Q4 earnings call, they mentioned, we have extremely good teams, we have extremely good quality of the users, but at specific point, after there is some moment when initial metrics are really good, but then actually the challenge comes. Yeah, of course, it's the kind of advantage for smaller studios, because in such cases, the companies can, instead of just doing their own games, they can just buy good studios. But again, showing the challenge. And again, in this case, we have amazing game from Playtika with really good metrics, but still it seems that we will have some kind of sunsetting here. So it means that, again, from the beginning, we need to understand what are good metrics for the specific genres. So, for example, one of the easiest metrics to understand in mobile gaming is, for example, day 2 retention. Okay, I'm buying user, how percentage of them is coming back the next day. So those are the thresholds for very good games in Western markets. So, for example, we have the highest retention now. They have the games from Battle Royale, Merge, competitive shooter. Those games are actually having very high retention rates. So if we have Battle Royale, and that Battle Royale has day 2 retention 27%, so I would not have a lot of hopes But in other genres, for example, let's say in puzzle RPG or like in 4X, such day 2 retention will be really good metric. It's even if we go further. So for example, here is the comparison of the different genres, looking at the looking at the play data for really good games. So we see that there are some games that in general, by definition, their business model is based on the retention. For example, Match 3 here is a good example, like Merge is a good example. Why? Because those genres are extremely competitive. Quite a lot of revenue is taken by the ads, which means that retention, especially long-term retention, matters a lot for the user's quality. So again, in those genres, we need to focus really heavily on retention because, again, retention is defining quite heavily the monetization of those genres. On the other side, there are some genres like 4X, or like, for example, like puzzle RPG, where this retention matters much less. Why? Because in those genres, the monetization defined by something else. For example, if we look at deeper view on the monetization, that's the average revenue per user, so which means that average revenue per payer. So we see that, for example, like in 4X or like MMORPG, in that genre, retention matters a little bit less because in general, those genres are driven by extremely high average revenue per paying user. So in this case, we care a little bit less about, so here we have, for example, in this case of like, when I mentioned this Match 3 or Merge, we have much wider monetization. So we need to earn little, but on much wider group of users. So that's why we care so much about retention. That's why we care so much about, okay, how many people bought at least once, even for very small price, versus, for example, in this MMORPG or like 4X or slots. Again, those genres are way more defined by the paying users and by whales. So those people who pay a lot. So in this case, retention matters less. And why I'm saying that? Because again, if you are building a specific game, you need to understand what type of game you are in, what type of business you are in, what type of monetization actually works for that type of games, what kind of competition you will have, and what is really driving monetization in the specific genre and for the specific audience. And there's not, and then if we go even further, if we look at the metrics, it's not just about development, because in this case, I would say that in mobile gaming, at least from my perspective, I see we have like 4 very important points. Like the first is, of course, product, which is obvious. You need to have really good game that people love, that people like to play. But what matters actually in case of mobile gaming, which a little bit differentiate the mobile gaming from maybe PC and console, need to pay much more attention to those another 3 points, which is monetization, data, and growth. And why need to pay more attention? Because they're extremely connected to each other. So for example, when I was mentioning this Match 3 example and why the retention matters so much, well, exactly, because it's connected to monetization. A lot of revenue is taken from ads. The more users are spending in the game, the more revenue possibilities and opportunities for us as the developer. Even it goes even further. Yeah? For example, it's good to understand what is the different type of monetization in different genres. So for example, in this case, we see there are some types of games that are extremely purchase and IP-driven in mobile gaming, like slots, like RPG. Again, there is not much ads there. Of course, we could think how to edit, but in general, usually that audience is too valuable to just show them ads. But then there are some other genres, like for example, like racing, where the share of ads is much higher, because again we have much wider audience with a little bit lower monetization. And then even we go further, yeah? So if we talk about monetization, it's good to understand what is the behavior of users for the specific type of monetization. For example, like, you know, the user behavior towards ads is not the same across the world. The data shows that, for example, users from emerging markets, they're way kind of have better attitude towards ads than people from the Western Europe, for example, yeah? So that's why the reason why if we, for example, have ad monetized games, very often they are pushed more in the emerging markets, versus if we have very IP-driven game, usually we push much more heavily the Western markets. And then, of course, if we go further, we can even ask ourselves, okay, what is the size of the market? Because there are a few different estimations of the market, usually based on data, AI, different tools, but very often they are not really taking into consideration the ads revenue. I try to estimate the ads revenue in different markets, and for example, if I try to add this estimation, I saw that countries like India, the ads revenue there is actually a few times higher than IIP revenue that is, for example, reported by the tools. So again, it's good to understand what actually is driving monetization in which countries. And then we can even go further and we ask also, okay, what it means about data. How actually I can grow my knowledge in the company around data. And in this case, the data understanding is not just about understanding, okay, what is day 2 retention? How many people are coming back? Or like just how to do SQL query. No, developing the data in the company means that more and more people understand what metrics, for example, matter for that specific type of the game. What metrics are connected with each other? For example, if I push more heavily average revenue per paying user because I will do the higher starter packs, for example, most likely my conversion will go down because those metrics are really connected with each other. Or what is the potential of the product based on different topics? And again, I'm mentioning those topics because I believe that even in very simple company that has like a few people, there should be at least someone who at least part of the time is spending with those topics, at least part of the time. Because again, that business is so hard, it's high win, high risk business. So how to understand the interaction between different metrics, how to actually build the real data capabilities in the company. How actually we can use the data day by day. And then in this case, we of course, from the data, we can go to the growth, which means that we need to understand that on one side, the importance of the paid growth is growing. We see it based on the data. That's the data based on the AI, comparing how actually the number of the paid users really increased in different segments of the mobile gaming. So that's actually more and more important topic from the user perspective. But on the other side, we see that, for example, those users can be used just to check what is the quality of the product. And again, there should be someone taking care of that growth in any mobile gaming company to making sure that, for example, someone can check, okay, what is our metric for day 2 retention? What is our metric for day 7 retention? And sometimes it's making sure that we understand the growth reality of the specific genre. What I mean by that? This is the interesting data from Google that is showing the aggregated data spent on the paid marketing, on the paid users. And what it's showing? It's showing that we have the advertisers aggregated together and divided by leagues. So here is like the biggest advertisers, smaller ones, which is like second league, then is smaller ones, and then like up to last league, yeah? So those are like size of the advertisers. And for example, if we look at the growth, for example, for a role-playing game, why that genre is so hard? Because in this case, growth is driven by top companies. Again, in role-playing, either you create amazing game that has amazing metric, or you almost do not exist. Versus, for example, if you compare it with, for example, with casual gaming, then here we have much more space for smaller players. So in this case, in general, from the growth perspective, the growth in the casual genre requires less experience than, for example, in role-playing. Because again, here we have extremely high-value users, expensive users, and really big advertising budgets. So if we are building a role-playing game, we need to think not only how to build that game, but how to grow that game, because it will be extremely hard. Versus casual will be a little bit easier, but again, even in casual, let's look at the match 3. Why? Because match 3 is one of the most competitive parts of the casual gaming, yeah? You have either extremely good game that are like created by like companies like, Playrix or like similar ones who had really extremely good metrics, so it's extremely hard to create games that actually are matching those metrics. And then, of course, making sure that from the founder perspective, we are not starting from the easiest part as well. Which I mean by that is, for example, like if you look at the data, still even on Google Play, like US is like around 30% of the market. If you look at the last few months. So of course you could say, okay, if I'm building the game, I will focus on US. And that's the easiest choice you can make. But on the other side, if you look deeper at the data, and for example, that's the data comparing revenue and downloads growth year over year for different countries, we see that, okay, by average, the market is quite stable, but at the same time, when US is declining around like 4% year over year, there are some countries like, for example, Turkey or like Poland that are growing like 10, 25% year over year. So those are much smaller markets, but they are growing markets. If we go even deeper and we look by downloads, because those are like the top markets by the IIP revenue, if we look by the downloads, then that picture looks even more interesting, because actually, if we look at those markets that are top markets by downloads, we start to see even Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, even Kyrgyzstan. So even in those markets, especially if we are aiming at ad monetization, even markets from your region can be actually really good ones for some testing, for acquisition of the users. So again, you can just go easily and say, okay, I just focus on US, and that's especially important, for example, if you want to talk to investors, because usually they care mostly about US. But if you have just small advertising budget and you want to get some users from different markets, very often it will be more interesting ones than just US. Especially that if you look at the data, for example, even if I look at the internal data, for one user in US, you can buy, for example, almost 40 users in Turkey. So if you want to have, if you want to buy 10,000 users to check your metrics, the best idea is to do it in US, but it will be costing you quite a lot. You can do it the same with much more cheaper markets. So on that we can actually ask ourselves, okay, so what? So like we had a lot of different topics that is good to think from the perspective what I can do as the founder to really actually decrease the, increase the chance for success. And I think there are like, in this case, how to actually increase the chance of success. And I think there are 4 points that are quite important, especially from market's perspective. The first one is market recognition. So I think it's really great that there are some events like this one, because even, for example, investment, the market recognition is important. Like, if you like it or not, for Finnish developers, it's easier actually to get investment than, for example, from someone from Central Asia or from Poland, yeah? Because they created strong image in the world, like the same with Turkey, that okay, those countries, they really know what they are doing. The developers from those markets are really, really strong. So even in case of Poland, yes, so for example, like, they did quite a lot around, making sure that the market is recognized. Still, most of the people associate Polish gaming with Witcher, even they are way, way more successful companies. But this market association is really important in that case. Then the second topic, which I think is quite important as well, is this team experience. Something, in general, at the end of the day, investor wants to minimize the risk. So you want to show that you have really strong experience. And of course, that is the reason why many of those investors, for example, like, they really kind of, beloved scenario is that head of growth on huge games is creating company together with VP of growth from Supercell and head of data from King or something, yeah? And then you have the people who really know what they are doing, and it's easy to invest in such team. But on the other side, even you, if you don't have such experience, still, the more you understand the gaming, the more you can show, okay, I'm someone who is understanding that industry, I'm someone who has experience, you should really use in your pitches for that case. Making sure, and in this case, that you hire mostly for experience, that you, for example, even the team, you hire mostly for attitude, for passion, not just for the experience. Because experience can be learned, passion cannot be not. Make sure the team knows how they actually work or respond to each other, because especially in mobile gaming, working together of different departments is way, way more even crucial than in PC and console. And then making sure that we have understanding of the market and the development. So that's why I was really describing a lot of details, because again, the more you understand that business, the more you can show to the investors or the people who will be paying that you know what you are doing, the higher chance actually you have to get really their attention. So making sure that actually you understand how the business works, that you are actually understand which markets are growing faster, which markets actually are growing not so fast. And even on Google side, we try to actually add some part to that, because in this business, that is important really to catch up what's happening with the industry, making sure that actually you are really following what is happening in the industry. That's actually why the reason we started those free events that are happening in the hybrid mode, so they are streamed online as well, with very professional growth, data, and monetization knowledge. So I really encourage you actually to sign up for that, because it's free knowledge from really top experts from exactly those topics that I was mentioning. From very specialized knowledge, which is really required, because again, high win, high risk, which means requires very strong experience and very strong specialization. And then, of course, metrics as the last one, yeah? So, again, you need to understand those metrics as how the metrics actually correspond with each other, yeah? So that's why making sure that you have in the team someone who understands the data, making sure that you know what is like the really good game in terms of data retention in the specific market, yeah? If I'm building the game in Battle Royale, what metrics are actually made by the good Battle Royale games? If I'm building match 3 games, what metrics have the really good match 3 games? Do I have the chance to match them? How far I'm from them? So again, that would be all from my side. Just to summarize, making sure that if you think about how to increase the chance of the success, again, it's marathon, not the sprint. The more you know about the industry, the better actually for you. Making sure that you understand is about growth, data, monetization, product, and build for the longer time, and making sure that you understand markets you are building the product for. That would be all from my side. I hope it was useful for you. Thank you very much. See you after the presentations. Thank you.